Faye blacks out after being controlled by id and winds up in the hands of the Nortoon Empire. Nortoon authorities recovered Weltall as well, and during analysis of the gear by their engineers, discover black boxes, preventing them from fully learning about it. A mysterious figure called the Executioner shows up and speaks with the Kaiser. This is Miang in disguise. She gives the Kaiser a means to pass through the barrier of Solaris called the Gatekeeper. Additionally, she requests that Faye and Weltall be moved to D-Block, the prison section of Nortoon. The reason she gives the Kaiser the Gatekeeper isn't really explained, but the Kaiser installs it in the Goliath, a flying superfortress bomber, so Nortoon would have a flying ship with the means of being able to travel to and from Solaris, as Solaris is protected by 3 gates on the surface of the planet. The reason she requests Faye move to D-Block is so that he can fight his way out and earn his freedom, because Miang needs Faye to reunite with the Zohar and be absorbed into Deus in order for the resurrection to be fully completed. Faye sees memories of the coward playing with their mother. Id notices Faye wanders into the coward's persona, and Id forces him out, as Id wants to be in complete control at all times and fears unification of the personalities. Here we see the Gazelle Ministry. They lost their physical bodies during what the game calls the Day of Collapse. Graf, whose goal is to destroy the world since Sophia died, was able to get a hold of the weapons called the Diabolos Corpse. This game calls them terminal interface weapons and doesn't go into more detail about what they are, but presumably they are like Omnigears that were part of the Deus weapon system. Originally there were 12 members of the Gazelle Ministry. Lacan killed 4 of them who were in Omnigears. Later he released the Diabolos Corpse onto the world, and the rest of the Gazelle Ministry were killed during this event, along with 98% of the world's population. The remaining 8 members were reprogrammed as AI into the Sol 9000 computer. In this scene, the Gazelle Ministry becomes aware of its awakening. The Gazelle Ministry then orders Nortoon to be completely purged in order to eliminate Faye. The plan is to use the Gebler airships to bomb the nuclear reactor of Nortoon, effectively killing everyone in the country. Faye goes through a battling baptism, and we are introduced to Rico, a demi-human. Demi-humans are looked down upon in Nortoon. Rico's father is the Kaiser, although the Kaiser doesn't know this. The Kaiser is a demi-human himself, but his features aren't as accentuated as much, so he wasn't persecuted. The Kaiser had expelled the Ethos from Nortoon, and in an act of revenge by the Ethos, they injected the Kaiser's wife, who was pregnant with Rico, with a serum called Sophrati that would greatly enhance the demi-human features of Rico. After he was born, he and his mom were expelled from Nortoon. The Ethos told the Kaiser they had died, and when Rico was a boy, his mother died of an illness. The only way for Faye to get out of D-Block is to battle his way out in an arena competition with Gears. He is convinced by his friends and a demi-human mechanic called Hammer to do this, but during a battle, Rico's subordinates sabotage his gear and Faye is severely wounded and needs to recover in bed. While the subordinates who sabotaged Faye's gear are in the Nortoon sewers, it awakens in Faye and kills them all in an act of revenge. Everyone suspects Faye killed them since they were the ones who tried to kill him, and in order to prove his innocence, he enters the sewers with Rico to find the true murderer. In the sewers, they find a monster called Red Rum, and after defeating it, conclude that Red Rum was the cause of the subordinates' deaths. However, Red Rum did not commit the murders. In the sewer, we are shown 2 different perspectives. One is of Id, which is overlaid with a red filter, and the other of Red Rum, which is overlaid with a green filter. Red Rum used to be a human and was turned into this monster. The bell that Seitan found was Red Rum holding onto what little humanity he had left, as the bell was given to him by his son because he got lost easily. Likewise, the son also got lost easily and had a matching bell. When Faye and the company travel to the orphanage, they return the bell, giving closure to the boy, knowing the true fate of his father. During the battle with Red Rum, however, Rico is injured and his fighting ability is compromised. Faye returns to the arena and continues to fight. While in the hangar, Wise Man shows up and gives Faye tips on how to beat Rico, as Wise Man needs Faye to escape Nortoon. Faye, with the aid of Rico's injuries, defeats him and becomes the battling champ and can leave Nortoon D-Block. The plan the Gazelle Ministry enacted to nuke the reactor in Nortoon goes into effect while Faye is invited into the central base of Nortoon where the Kaiser resides. Rico follows in an attempt to assassinate the Kaiser. He is able to enter the personal room of the Kaiser despite it having DNA recognition. As stated before, Rico is the Kaiser's son. The Kaiser, for a moment, brushes off that Rico could be his son, and he is taken away to be executed for attempting to assassinate the Kaiser. The next plan is for Faye to get Weltal back, as it is in the possession of the Battling Committee. Faye gets his gear back and rescues Rico from being assassinated in an arena of spectators. Then Gebler shows up in Nortune in order to blow the country up to kill Faye. Rico, despite hating the country which shunned him, ends up fighting to save it. Ellie is leading the mission into Nortune, and when Faye confronts Ellie, he convinces her that her actions are wrong, and he gets in Weltal to save the country. Despite Faye and Rico defeating the defenses of the ship carrying the warhead, it's still able to get the nuclear warhead off and point it at the reactor of Nortune. Here, Ellie uses her gear to try to divert the warhead away from the reactor in an attempt to save as many people as she can. She pushes her gear until it fails her and she falls to the surface. However, she did alter the trajectory of the warhead enough so that it would not directly hit the reactor, though it still lands in the country and detonates. Graf, watching Ellie about to be vaporized, uses his gear Alpha Weltal to shield her from the blast. He did this because of Lacan's will of protecting Ellie and the pain he endured when he watched Sophia sacrifice herself. Afterwards, Faye and company plan to steal the Goliath. To do this, they need to break into the Goliath factory where it is stored. After they board the Goliath, they run into Graf, who isn't ready for Faye to go into Solaris using the Gatekeeper-equipped Goliath and tries to stop him. Graf does not attack Ellie at all during this fight as he doesn't wish to hurt her. Citan is able to remove Graf from the ship by using some maneuvers to shake him off. After they are free of Graf, we see Bart in the Yggdrasil II, a similar submarine that was excavated from the sands beneath the Ignis Desert after the first Yggdrasil was destroyed by Id. Bart sees the Goliath ship in the air and mistakes it for the enemy, and shoots it down using surface-to-air missiles that were equipped in the Yggdrasil II. The crash creates a vibrational disturbance which is picked up by Ramses from a Gebler ship. Ramses asks if it could be Chevette, but the disturbance was not big enough to indicate that it would be a whole country that crashed. Graf exploits Ramses' hatred towards Faye to capture him, and speaks with Miang in the hallway here. Here, Graf is suspicious as to why Miang gave the Gatekeeper to Nortune, which in turn wound up in Faye's hands. She then reminds Graf that she helped him by allowing Faye to be freed from Nortune by transferring him to the D-Block. She then refers to the vessel, which is likely a reference to Emeralda, as she is located in the ancient Zeboim civilization under the Aquavi region. When she says they don't know this, she is referring to the Gazelle's ministry's ignorance of using Ramses' resentment towards Faye as a means of inciting Ramses to kill Cain. When Miang thanks Graf, it could be because Graf eliminated 98% of the population during the Diabolos collapse, or the Day of Collapse, as the humans in this timeline weren't suitable parts for Deus and needed to be wiped out, as it is Miang's purpose to resurrect Deus. However, the next line implies that she is thanking Graf for saving Ellie from the blast, as Ellie is an integral part of restoring Deus, as she was part of the original mother and needs to be restored to Deus for the resurrection to be complete. With her death, the plan to resurrect Deus would have ended completely. For some unexplained reason in the game, Deus cannot be resurrected after 10,000 years, and this game takes place in the year 9999. Ramses then departs to Aquavi to pursue Faye. Here, the Gazelle Ministry talks about the Anima Relics and Faye's friends which possess the Animus factor. Both the Anima Relics and the Animus originated as organic parts of Deus and were separated from each other when Deus was disassembled. The Anima is the female component and the Animus is the male component. The Anima itself is a powerful biological component that attaches itself to the respective Animus-capable gears in order to transform them into Omni-gears. The Gazelle Ministry used to be the Animus, but the majority of the Ministry were killed by Lacan during the Day of Collapse. Krellian's nanomachine technology allowed for a loophole where their bodies were no longer needed to fully resurrect Deus, however, thus their purpose of existing as data in the Sol 9000 is irrelevant to the resurrection of Deus, unbeknownst to them. Although the Gazelle Ministry blames the contact as being the reason the lambs on the surface were given the ability to become Animus, which was originally only supposed to be relegated to the Gazelle Ministry, it is most likely that the reason the lambs have the ability to possess the Animus factor was due to the Gazelle's procreation with the humans, which passed this gene down to them. The Sephradi the Gazelle are talking about is a reference to the test conducted on Rico when he was still in the womb. When the Ethos injected this Sephradi test mixture into Rico, it was successful in giving him an Animus factor. 500 years ago, two relics were aligned, one with Roni Fatima and the other with Krellian. They then talk about the ancient civilization Zeboim. The The Zeboam civilization is technologically equivalent to a near future of our civilization as we know it today, except in this world it existed around 4,000 years prior to the events in this game. In this era, the contact was known as Kim. He was a researcher who wrote a thesis about reconstructing genes using nanomachines. His goal was to create an artificial life form using these nanomachines. At first, his plan was shut down by his peers in society as they deemed it unnatural, so he was expelled from his research and became a doctor for the government. At this hospital he worked at, he met Ellie and they fell in love. It's worth pointing out, since the game mentions this, Ravine, a terrorist organization, blew up an electrical facility and caused half the city to lose power. The hospital Kim worked at lost power, which resulted in the death of a young girl whom he was caring for, along with 5 other patients. Miang was awakened during this time, and they became very interested in Kim's thesis as a means of resurrecting Deus using this technology. She contacted Kim and allowed him use of a facility where he could begin his research into creating an artificial life form using nanomachines. Ravine wanted Kim's technology to use as a weapon, but Kim refused. At dinner one night, we learned that the humans in this era have a very short lifespan and are mostly genetically damaged and unable to procreate, including Ellie. Kim allies himself with Ravine as they offer him enough resources to bring his research into fruition, and Emeralda was created as a surrogate daughter for himself and Ellie. The goal of Emeralda was to allow humans to survive despite the failing genetics. Kim learns of Miang's true intentions, which is to use his research to resurrect Deus, and hides Emeralda. Special forces invade the facility to capture Emeralda, and Kim locks himself up in a room with her, though Ellie is trapped outside, where they execute her. Miang, unable to do anything about the failing genetics which renders humans unsuitable for Deus, manipulates Graf into destroying most of humanity in the Day of Collapse in order to restart from a mostly clean slate. This also causes the Zeboam civilization to sink to the bottom of the sea. Krelian is after this technology which resides below Akavi in the Sea of Zeboam. The Earth shifting was likely a reference to an earthquake which exposed the Zeboam civilization, which the Ethos discovered when the earthquake occurred, but the Ethos hid the discovery. The Gazelle is ignorant in that they aren't threatened by the nanomachine technology. They still believe, despite being machines which have no animus alignment, they will be reformed into Deus as they were programmed to do so. The Gazelle are simply ones and zeros at this point, though their original programming still compels them to believe that they would be reunified with Deus. They resume talking about eliminating the contact. The Anomalby that they speak of here refers to an awakened contact, though it could be a person or a prophecy that says the contact, when fully awakened or aligned with the Zohar once again, will be the final key to resurrecting Deus and returning to space. The Gazelle Ministry do not believe in this prophecy because the last time the contact was awakened by reuniting with the Zohar, Lacan destroyed the world. Thus, when Faye was discovered to be the next contact, Cain sent Titan to keep an eye on him in order to prevent this from happening again. They call themselves gods, which further highlights their arrogance. Ellie and Faye are alive but stranded on the wreckage of the Goliath in the sea. The rest of the crew was rescued by Bart and board the Yggdrasil. The Thames, a floating salvage ship, rescues Faye and Ellie. By orders of Krelian, we see Dominia and Kelvina underwater in search of the wreckage of the Goliath where they hope to find Faye. They mention that they thought the Yggdrasil sank but couldn't confirm it. It did sink, but they do not realize that it is a different ship. Dominia and Kelvina are members of the Elements, powerful ether users with a very high rank among the Solaris military. Currently, the 4 members are Dominia, who masters Earth, Seraphita, who masters Fire, Tolone, who masters Wind, and Kelvina, who masters Water. Previously, the Elements were Jesse, Earth, Sigurd, Fire, Ramses, Wind, and Citan, Water. Dominia defies Ramses' orders and attempts to sink the Yggdrasil. The captain of the Thames notices the Yggdrasil under attack, and Faye and Ellie leave the Thames to help Bart and his friends. During the battle, Ellie is captured. Miang speaks with Ellie and programs her to sabotage the Yggdrasil's engine, then releases her back to Faye, as Miang fears an engagement with the Yggdrasil would be deadly for them. Later, Dominia attacks the Yggdrasil, and during this encounter, Ramses causes Faye to go into a coma.